Where do we belong now?
There's not a question of where we belong. It's when.
Season is really kind of difficult and emotionally challenging for these characters, but time a child is in danger or under threat, that would be heightened even further. So I appreciate how active your character was in finding her son. Was it nice to see the growth that she's had to get her to the place she was in this half of the season? What was it like to really kind of let that mama bear come out?
It's actually extremely refreshing to let what I think is Brianna at her core out. I think when we started the show, there was a lot I had to rein back in. She was a little less mature, a little less evolved, didn't know herself as well, didn't quite know how to handle her emotions or her outlets. And so there's so much of Brianna that I had to just let unfold as the seasons went on. And I was so eager to get to this point where actually I think the most authentic Brianna is where she is just raw and emotionally open. And she's such an empathetic person. And she is such a protective person. And I think one thing for her is that she never really had, or felt like she never really had, anybody to protect her. And so I think when it comes to the point that she really can be a parent, she's going to completely anchor down and do that. And I think actually the hardest parts for her in this season were where she couldn't, where she felt like she wasn't in control, and she kind of had to relinquish that and let Roger go and find Jemmy. And I think a couple of episodes ago where we find her in the kitchen just shows the helplessness and hopelessness of not being able to be in the driver's seat of your own child's well-being. And so what I love about this episode and the one just before it is that she really can take the reins a bit more. And I think that is where Brianna is in her element. So yeah, I think it was a relief for me as an actor to be able to play this version of Brianna, who I've been waiting to play for like 8 years. And I think for Brianna, it's a relief because just her family's back together and she realizes that that's all that matters to her right now. And that's all she needs. It doesn't matter where it is or what's going on. Everyone being able to be in her arms is just like a safety she'd never known.
I had read you had described her once as a bit of a hot mess this season. And I see it that way because she's had one of her children taken and Roger's in another time period. I feel like that would push anyone to the limits. And, you can give her a little bit of room on the hot mess.
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, look, I would never say hot mess with any judgment. I mean, one thing you can never do is judge your character anyway. And I actually, as a person, I'm not a judgmental person, but one thing you should never do is judge your character, because then obviously you can't play it authentically. You have to be able to justify every decision your character makes and be on board with it, whether you as a human agree or not. But no, when I say a hot mess, I think just because it's just such a plethora of emotions and shit, quite frankly, that sometimes you just don't know where to start. And I think when Rob Cameron comes to the house and he just is not negotiating with her, it's just, again, it's that helplessness again and that frustration. And just, she has nothing at this point and has nothing to lose. And it's like, that just puts you in a headspace that I would describe as just kind of, like a boiling pan. It's unpredictable.
At least a little impressed that she would pick up a gun and fire it to protect her family. I mean, do you think she would have killed him if she had had the chance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think she would. Yeah, absolutely. I think she's been through too much, right? I mean, look, she's not as hot-headed as she used to be. I do think that she acts with a little bit more context and intelligence now. So I'm not saying that she would do it from a place of naivety of like, yeah, okay, cool, I can just kind of kill people and get away with it. But I think that her son's been taken. And I think, the one thing that is great about this season is just that question of what lengths would you go to? Not just the characters on screen, but it kind of makes you as a viewer sort of check in that situation of like, actually, what would you do? Like if this guy has your child and your child could have gone to any time period, you might never find him in this heat of the moment, what lengths would you go to? And I think Brianna has just been through so much trauma and grown up in a time in the 18th century where that was unfortunately just a norm. And I think that absolutely is kind of where her muscle memory defaults to now.
Love that, she knows Roger well enough to know that he wouldn't ever return home without their son. So she's the one that had to go find him to reunite the family herself. Did it feel special to you that she was the one who actually got her family back together?
Yeah, I do. I think one thing that the show started out on was being very female-led, and we're very proud of that. And obviously, it's sometimes beautiful to throw a sprinkle of damsel in distress in there. That's realistic, but I think it's definitely great that the writers and producers have remembered our roots and where the show came from, and sort of circle back to that. So yeah, I think Brianna being the one to save the day and the one to, again, take the reins and make the risk and go back and be the one who puts the food on the table and the one who takes care of the family, I think is a really cool message. And I think that's a really good message to send out to a lot of the younger fans that have grown up with Brianna. It's like, you can do it all, and, you don't have to rely on somebody. It's amazing when you can, and Brianna can rely on Roger, but also, like, you can do this.
It's cool that, not only can this woman do it all, but she can do it all in a multitude of times.
I know. But that's one thing I love about Bree. So I think even when I said the hot mess thing, it's kind of like, I never want it to look as if she used to be very stoic, and she used to come across that she had all of her, again, excuse my language, but her shit together. And actually, what I love about her now is that she's far more vulnerable and transparent and raw in her emotions. It's like, actually, she's freaking out. She doesn't know what to do. Like, actually, life really is on top of her, and somehow she digs in and she finds a way. And I think that is, again, a beautiful thing I love about the show, in that it's not all like sunshine and daisies, and we don't make impossible stuff look easy. It's very much like, do you know what? Sometimes it's okay to be at rock bottom. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel lost and not know what to do. And that's why I love some of those scenes where Brianna's just on her own, or she's putting on a brave face for Mandy, because it's, there's a little bit of realism sprinkled in there, which I think is really important for people to see.
How did you find the experience of filming a good chunk of the season apart from all of the rest of your cast? I mean, you should at least have somebody with you. And I mean, did it feel kind of allowed extra room for her to grow, or did it just feel kind of lonely and separated from everybody else?
Yeah, it felt lonely. I think it maybe in a weird way allowed her to connect with herself a bit more. And I certainly felt that again, like for those scenes where Brianna's kind of sat on her own, just staring into space and feeling lost, and there's nothing she can do except wait. I think in those moments, that's when you really, in that silence, I think is often where you sort of re-find yourself a little bit, which I know sounds really corny, but I just think in those moments, Brianna's life is so busy. She's a full-time working mom. She's got 2 kids, they're renovating the house, there's time travel, all this stuff. And actually in those moments where she just sat on the couch and Mandy's asleep and she has nothing, I think that often is louder than when you've got all the noise going on. And I think it's in those moments where actually you can find the most strength, because those moments are quite scary. So yeah, I do think she maybe didn't grow in those moments, but maybe just had a minute to actually sit with herself for a second, which I don't ever think she gets the chance to do. But yeah, for me, filming, it was a weird season. Katrina came on set one day because I think she had a scene after me or something, or she was directing, I think. And she kind of just popped on. She's like, wow, I didn't really realize how isolated you'd been all season. So yeah, it was just me, my broken hand, and 2 kids. And that's why they wrote the broken finger into the season as well, because it was a lot to deal with. I was going through some stuff.
People don't know how sets are run or how things are really shot. And I would imagine there were times when you were doing scenes with the kids that the kids weren't even there because they can only work a certain amount of hours. So then you're even more alone than people realize, because it doesn't look that way in the scene.
Totally. And I love that you said that. Yeah. I mean, with the kids' hours that they do and the breaks that they need to have and the amount of time, obviously we shoot very long days. The kids can only do certain hours and they have to have breaks every X amount of time, but we fit a lot in a day. We don't have time to just stop shooting. It's too big of a show. So yeah, most of those scenes will just be me to, like, I don't know, a crew member on their knees pretending to be Jemmy, which often is more distracting. I'm like, just put a mark on the wall for me, and I'll find that and just do the scene to that. But yes, you're right. Most of the time it's just me acting with me or a tennis ball.
Yeah, which, it doesn't look anything like a person.
No, there's no emotion coming back at you there. You've got to imagine.
What I really loved about the reunion is that it's kind of played out in 2 parts, with Roger seeing Jemmy first before he knew that Brianna and Mandy were also there. Mm-hmm. Was there a conversation about how that whole reunion should play out? I mean, did you talk about or shoot any different versions of that moment? Because it always seems like, when you're waiting for so long for a moment like that to happen, how do you even get it like as perfect as you want it to be?
Yeah. Actually, I think that the writers pretty much had that in mind, that Jemmy emerged first. Obviously, the through line of the season for them has been looking for him. So that was really fitting, I think. But it was sort of coming through the smoke, I think, was the hardest bit. I think in Scotland, we're always battling the weather and the wind and everything else. So the logistics of that scene was probably the hardest bit. And again, just kids' hours and trying to get the perfect lighting, the perfect XYZ when you're on location is always tricky. But in terms of the configuration of the order we all came through, that was actually pretty set. So that was a kind of a one goal scene.
I love that. It was like a double tearjerker moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think for us lot as well, because I think that was the last scene we all shot together, which is always quite nice because it's one of those moments where, you never know if like next season the kids will be older, if they won't be in again. So you do actually get that authentic feel of saying goodbye, and to Lallebrock as well. So
now that you've done the whole series and you have, you can think about what it was like as a whole, does this particular moment just feel like one of those important points in her story that's always going to be an important point to her story?
Yeah, it does. Because for Brianna, I think she kind of had two parents. Then she had one. Then she had none. Then she had one, two, none. She's always been. She probably has kind of some abandonment issues. She's very much been on her own. She didn't have siblings. She didn't have grandparents. She's been quite a lonely kid, and she's had, nothing short of a lot to deal with in her life and a lot of loss. And so, for her to actually have her own family and for them to be back in a time where they can together maybe go find her parents again, maybe not, or set up life there, but have Buck there, the concept of her kids having an uncle or of that sort, a great uncle, is wonderful to Brianna because she just never had family. So yeah, this scene really did mean a lot because she's been desperate for that her whole life and it's been taken away from her time and time again. And I think now really feels like the time where she's been to hell and back, and now I think it's like, right, whatever happens now, we are dealing with it as a family. We're not splitting up. And I think that is such a fresh feeling for her. And so yeah, it's such a character peak for her because I just think it's a point of life that she's never really had before. Like the concept of everyone being able to be together and the extended family is like surreal to her.
That you've been exploring her arc, you're also exploring the relationship arc with her and Roger. When you think of where their relationship got to by the end of this season, even by the end of the series as a whole, how does that journey feel to you? I mean, do you feel satisfied now with the closure of their story?
Yeah, I'm super proud of them as characters because I think they both had so much growing to do individually and together. And I think one thing that I've always loved about the show is that it shows very different types of relationships and how not all idea of romance has to be the same. And I think we've been fed a lot with movies that that this is what it should look like. And I think one thing that's great about Brianna and Roger, but is also their downfall, is that it's real. They make mistakes. They don't communicate, which drives me crazy, but they've not handled things fantastically in the past, yet they've still worked through it. And I'm really proud of the people they are now and the couple they are now. They seem to communicate better and they seem to really be dealing with the external as a team as opposed to letting the external come in and tear them apart. And I think that is all you can really ask for. And I think that it's come to a really cool pinnacle of their relationship at this point.
Season, they make this decision to reunite with Claire and Jamie, and even though we don't see that family reunion yet,
do they? I don't know.
They've kind of made that decision that they're gonna, at least, whether they stay in that time period, it seems like they're gonna at least get back in the same space with them. So what would it mean to her to have that reunion again after becoming this person that she is now? She's put her family back together. It's sort of feels like she's found a strength that she didn't necessarily fully know she had. Mm-hmm. How different will that make her in season 8, just reuniting with them or just getting through what she has to get through in this last season?
I think that Brianna, actually, one thing that she will always bet on is herself. I think that she has had to be exceedingly strong before, which I think has actually been maybe a little bit damaging for her, but I don't think she ever doubts that she will make it through something. And so I don't know that that necessarily would be a changing factor when she reunites with her parents. But I do think just that sense of relief will be something that she's never felt quite to that extent before. Because just, sorry to like circle back on my other point, but I think she and Claire have always had a very kind of mother-daughter, best friendy relationship that's kind of always switched around. Like at times, Brianna's been the mother to Claire and vice versa. And so I think she's always had that that strength and that mama bear element in her. So I don't necessarily think that that would be different around Jamie and Claire. I think it's just that now, I think now more than ever, she will really hold on to what she has when she has it because of the loss of Jemmy. I think if they were to reunite again, I really think that that will be the last time Brianna's leaving. I don't think she's messing around with this time travel thing anymore. I think now she knows that she can take any potential guilt away in that she's not putting her kids in more or less danger by being in the past. It's kind of like, do you know what? We've tried to do the safest thing for them and go to the future. Everywhere's fucked. We're going to stay here forever now with mum and dad. And I think that she will now just hold on to the entire extended family unit as opposed to like just her own more than ever. And I think that it's all the same priority now. So I think that's what will change, just sort of that anchoring down.
When the finale ends, I would imagine Outlander fans are going to start setting a countdown clock for when the final season will finally air and they'll get to see that. So what would you say to tease what you're most excited about with the final season, what fans will see with the final season of the show? I mean, I know you said that it's going to blow people's minds a little bit, but is that something that it'll continue to do throughout the final season or just in specific moments? Like,
yeah, I think so. I think, you know, it's really hard when you get to this point of a show, right? And it can feel like you're just circulating stories again, or it can feel like stuff's getting diluted or a little bit, like recycled. But I personally, from my stuff, I'm so excited for people to see season 8 because I think, like you said before, there is a change in Brianna. She is written like much more of a just secure woman now. And I've loved playing that. I've really loved the dynamic with everyone in season 8. And I also think everybody knowing for sure that it was the last one, I think that relationship and that magic just really comes out on screen. And, you know, we've all known each other for 10 years. It's family. And so you really feel it. And there's just much more grit to 8, in my opinion, for Brianna at least. And yeah, I know there's been seasons before where we're like, this is our favorite season, but genuinely season 8, I think for me is like season 1 or season 4. It's just epic. So I know Outlander is always long, and that must be so hard, but I won't say promise, but I think this one will be worth it. And then it's the final one. So, you know, let's just hold on to it while we have it, I guess.
Close the book on the series and the character. What's really sort of most surprised you about just the entire experience of having spent so many years telling a story, playing the same character? I mean, what couldn't you have imagined before you'd actually done it and completed it?
That's a good question. I think we're very lucky with the show in that I've gotten to play Brianna from age 16 with all the flashbacks with Frank. Tobias Menzies, loved working with him. So we've managed to do, you know, age 16 to age 32, 35, whatever Brianna ends up as. With the flashbacks, time periods, so many different characters coming in and out that it just feels like we've done a lot of shows in one. In that sense. So I'm lucky that for me, at least, each season has been quite fresh. And we've had, like I said, a different layer of Brianna that's been peeled away. And now I think, especially by season 8, we are getting to a version of her that I'm super proud of. So I think because of the books, I always knew that we were going to have that. So that wasn't necessarily a surprise element. But I think, honestly, the thing that's the most surprising for me out of all of it is just the fandom. And obviously, I knew what I was getting myself into in season 2. I'd seen the response to season 1, and it was incredible. And the way the fans welcomed me was incredible. But just the vulnerability of the fans and how much your character, especially with Brianna having been through so much sexual trauma and death and so many things, and the letters and the people that reach out when you see them, and just the stories that they give you and the trust that they put in you. And, you know, they end up telling me things that they've never told anyone before. And somehow either Brianna or me playing Brianna allows them to open up and it helps them heal. And that to me has been the most surprising and rewarding thing of all of it, because it's just so cool to see this new age of fandom coming in with the show, growing up with Roger and Brianna and just like learning so much from Bree and just becoming stronger for it and believing in themselves more. It's just been more powerful than I could have imagined. It's really cool.
Yeah, it also feels pretty remarkable that it feels like they've stayed as strong or even been stronger from season to season. I mean, usually that like wanes a little bit and it doesn't feel like it ever did for this show.
Yeah, it's like snowballing. I'm like, oh, there's more of you. I'm like, oh, Outlander was very long. I thought you'd all be dropping off, but it's building. So yeah, that's super rare, and I'm really, really astounded and grateful. It's very cool. And I think even just like when I talk about one of the first things a lot of fans ask me is, what are you doing next? And they're not just invested in just the character anymore. They're invested in us because I think it's been so long, and it's just lovely because they want to see what you're doing next and they want to follow you as opposed to just the character. And I think that's really, really something. And I'm super touched by that.
Really weird to try to find a next thing when you've played a character for so long. I mean, I would imagine as an actor, you always want to play different characters, but it seems like after playing a character for 10 years, it would be even harder to try to figure out like what to take on after that.
I think, honestly, I'm just quite excited to do something different. I think I'm quite lucky in that, we have the wig, we have the costumes of a complete different time period, and my accent's different. So for me, it really is easy to leave Brianna at the door for many reasons, but that all helps. So I'm quite excited to just kind of be a bit of a chameleon and go completely into something else. I quite like people not being able to identify, kind of a bit like what I look like as Sophie, because people, even fans, they'll kind of come to a convention and they'll think they're seeing Brianna and then they're like, oh, you play Brianna. I'm like, yeah. So for me, I feel quite fortunate that I can sort of morph into something else easily. And I feel with season 8, I've left Brianna at a place that I feel a lot of closure on. And so that makes it a lot easier to go into the next thing because there's nothing more we can do with that character. She's laid to rest and she's may or may not be good, but she's done her story, and I think it's really peaceful actually to leave her there.
You know what you're going to do next? Did you want to take some time to figure out what you want to do next? Are you like, please find me a comedy with some nice weather?
Comedy would be great, and yes, the cold weather. I've done my stint for now. Filming somewhere with sunshine would be fantastic for a little while. Yeah, no more pneumonia from night shoots in the cold.
Wrapped on a series where you've played the same character for 10 years. Is it something you'd ever consider doing again? I mean, would you be interested in doing another long-running series, or would you prefer to know like ahead of time that it would be something with a shorter run? Like, what have you thought as far as, taking something like that on again?
Well, I think TV and series are at a very different place now than they were 8 years ago. I think it's rare for something to go for as long as we did. I mean, obviously, if it's the right project and the right character, I want to do great stuff. So I would never say no to that. But for now, I'm just excited to do something different, and what that looks like, I don't know. But no, in terms of sitting and figuring it out, I'm not very good at being unemployed. So no, I'm on to the next. But yeah, let's after that, I don't know. Yeah, if the right thing comes along, then the time on it doesn't matter. If the quality stays good and the character's great and the writing's great and the team's great, then that's really rare and really magical. So yeah, I wouldn't put a stamp on a time limit.